Jalen Rice hadn't stepped foot inside a diplomatic compound in over 2 years. Not since the incident above Dros V. Not since the orders he obeyed ended with 12 dead, 3 of them children. But now the blinking red priority alert on his neuroband refused to be ignored. Rice, report to Hub Core 7. Diplomatic breach. Full clearance required. He tossed his half-packed duffel into the corner. So much for retirement. The halls of the orbital station Meridian Prime smelled of sterilized metal and burned coffee. Humanity's flagship hub for interspecies negotiation, always more formality than function. Jalen strode past guards who recognized the scars in his face more than his rank. Every glance was a reminder, the human who didn't know when to walk away. The one who stayed in the fire until it burned everyone else. Administrator Kaylin Voss met him at the docking bay. Her usual calm replaced with the taut expression of someone balancing on a wire. Commander Rice. Glad you're still on my emergency list. Didn't know I had a list, Jalen muttered, eyeing the pristine diplomatic shuttle now moored inside the bay. Its hull glowed with a soft, iridescent sheen, far too elegant to be human-made. Lissaran delegation arrived early, Voss said. Their intended liaison? Contracted a neuroplague on Alvarez. Our backup? Delayed by riots on Mars Gate. You're it. He blinked. I'm not a diplomat. No, but you're trained in cross-species empathy protocols, and frankly, you're the only one who's already pissed off every major faction. No political currency left to lose. Charming. It's a week. Play host. Make sure their representative doesn't start an incident. Do that, and I'll authorize your discharge request to the Rim colonies. Jalen hesitated. Who's the delegate? The airlock hissed. She stepped forward. 6 feet tall. Purple fur dusted with starlight shimmer. Vulpine ears tilted toward any sound. And her eyes, violet ringed with gold, narrowed with the intellect of a born strategist. I am Vaelirason, she said with a voice like crushed velvet and electric storms. And you must be the liaison. Jalen's heart stalled mid-beat. Gods help him, he didn't believe in fate. But whatever just walked out of that shuttle? It changed everything. Jalen was trained to assess threats in seconds. He'd survived assassins disguised as servants, diplomats who concealed toxins in their tongues, and alien soldiers who smiled right before they stabbed. But Vaelirason wasn't dangerous in those ways. She was worse. Elegant. Self-assured. Every movement precise, like she'd choreographed the air to part just for her. She walked with the silent grace of predators who didn't need to bare teeth. They knew everything already belonged to them. This is first contact protocol? She asked, stepping into his personal space. You look like you just saw a gravity breach. You're not what I expected, Jalen said, hating how breathless it sounded. I'm used to that, she said, folding her arms. Most humans expect fur and fangs. A pet. Or a threat. She turned her gaze toward the docking bay's steel ribs. Neither will serve your alliance. Jalen cleared his throat. Your quarters are prepped. Suite 4B, linked to mine for convenience. Vaelira blinked. Shared access? Common area only. Private rooms. Unless you prefer I bunk with the station's riot unit. Her ears flicked. On Lysera, cohabitation outside mate bonding is culturally inappropriate. And on Meridian Prime, real estate's a war zone, Jalen said. This is as separate as it gets. A pause. Then, I'll adjust. They walked side by side through the sterile corridors, attracting stares from nearly every species they passed. Humans, Elvari engineers, even the apathetic Drexian pilots who normally ignored everything not made of metal. Jalen stole glances. Her fur caught the light in waves. Her tail, a long elegant arc tipped in violet, moved in rhythm with her steps, too deliberate to be casual. In the lift, silence stretched. Then she asked, What happened to your eye? He frowned. Tactical shard. Dros V. Didn't duck fast enough. Why didn't you replace it? I like to see the world with what's left. She nodded. Once, as if that answered a different question. Their shared suite was standard diplomatic fare, clean, impersonal, modular furniture that could adjust to at least 7 different physiologies. 2 private rooms flanked a common area outfitted with a kitchenette, comms terminal, and an unnecessary couch. Veolyra stepped into her quarters, then immediately stepped back out. "There's a mirrored wall," she said. "So? I do not sleep in front of reflections. Especially not engineered ones." "You're not on Lysera anymore," Jalen said, rubbing his temple. "I can get it removed." She tilted her head. "You're more agreeable than I expected. And you're more high maintenance than I hoped." A faint smile ghosted her lips. "We'll both be disappointed then." That night, Jalen sat alone on the suite's couch, nursing a warm glass of reconstituted whiskey, reading the report Administrator Voss had pushed into his hand. Veolyra Sen, born Sector 4, Lysera Prime. Genetic designation, high caste diplomatic line. Selected for exocultural immersion at age 12. Known psychological traits, hyperanalytical. Low tolerance for deception. Displays uncommonly high emotional self-regulation. He glanced toward her closed door and wondered what it would take to break through that control. Because something told him he'd already started trying. Jalen woke to the scent of ozone and citrus, sharp, clean, alien. It drifted from the adjoining quarters like a memory trying to crawl inside his skull. He pulled on a shirt, padded into the common room, and froze. Veolyra stood on her side of the kitchen island, brushing her fur with deliberate strokes, long violet locks draping over her shoulder. She wore a sleeveless top cut with Lyseran minimalism, elegant and perfectly fitted. Her tail flicked once behind her like a question mark. "Good morning," she said without looking up. "You're awake early. I meditate at dawn. Your station cycle was disorienting at first, but I've adjusted." She set the brush down and looked at him. Jalen realized he was staring. "You always shed this much?" he asked, clearing his throat. A smile touched the corner of her mouth. "Only when I'm stressed." Jalen poured himself burnt coffee. "I figured you'd be more comfortable in the upper diplomatic decks. Less human contamination. I prefer to observe systems from the ground level, where the machinery shows. Ever tried staying where the rust lives?" Her ears twitched. "You assume I haven't." Jalen glanced at the data pad on the table. She'd already compiled a full overview of station hierarchy, trade flows, even black market access points, things he didn't think she should know. She was learning fast. Too fast. "Planning an invasion?" "No. Understanding yours." She stepped around the counter and leaned over his shoulder, her breath brushing his neck as she pointed to a highlighted diagram of the station's layout. "These cross ducts," she murmured, "aren't on your public schematics. Because they're service tunnels. Obsolete." "No. Obsolete things aren't monitored. Which makes them valuable." Jalen turned to face her. "You hacking station schematics?" "I'm learning. It's different." He couldn't decide if he wanted to throttle her or kiss her. Probably both. Later that day, Administrator Voss called them to the upper deck. "You're to accompany Veolyra to the market district," she said without pleasantries. "The Lyseran Council expects visible presence among civilians. Optics matter." "Why do I feel like I'm a damn show dog?" Jalen muttered. Veolyra turned her gaze toward him. "Because you are." The commercial sector of Meridian Prime was a kaleidoscope of chaos. Vendors shouted in 5 languages. Neon signs buzzed like hornets. Species from opposite ends of the galaxy bartered over obsolete tech, rare minerals, and flesh substitutes grown in protein vats. Jalen stayed close, one hand near the concealed stun baton under his coat. Veolyra walked with the confidence of someone who knew her presence drew attention, and didn't care. "This is where your culture thrives?" she asked. "This is where it breathes," he answered. She stopped at a stall where a human child traded joke trinkets with a Drexian elder. Something flickered in her eyes, softness, maybe, or longing. Then she turned. Buy me something. Jalen blinked. What? A cultural exchange. Show me how humans express curiosity through commerce. He looked around. Most of the vendors hawked junk. But there was one. He picked up a polished obsidian pendant from a thin, wrinkled merchant with 8 fingers. Veolyra examined it silently, then brushed his hand as she took it. Her fur flared faintly at the contact. Thank you, she said, and her voice was quieter than usual. They continued walking. Either spoke of the gift. But Jalen felt it burning in his pocket anyway. Jalen's boots echoed softly in the corridor as they returned from the market. His senses stayed keyed on her, even when he wasn't looking. She walked beside him, her usual fluid grace now tinged with something slower. Thoughtful. The pendant hung around her neck, black against the deep plum hue of her fur. It shimmered faintly when the station lights caught it. You went quiet back there, he said after a while. I was thinking. Dangerous habit. Veolyra gave him a sidelong glance. You joke to deflect discomfort. Yeah. I also breathe. Want me to stop that too? She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. Your people barter in noise. Words. Movement. We speak less, but we feel more. Silence is not absence. It's observation. They reached the shared suite. Inside, the air was still, touched only by the soft hum of recycled oxygen. Veolyra walked to the observation window, resting her palms on the cool pane. Her reflection merged with the stars outside, a silhouette framed by black velvet space and distant firelight. I saw someone today, she said without turning. Jalen leaned against the doorframe. Yeah? A child. Human. They wore a collar, tracking ID, or some kind of security tag. That's standard on trade wards, he said. Kids on the outer stations get snatched sometimes. Not often, but it happens. Her ears twitched. I hate it. I do too. No, she said softly. You accept it. That's worse. He didn't have a reply for that. After a moment, she turned toward him. Do you ever wish you'd been born somewhere else? All the time. Where? Anywhere I wouldn't be told who I had to be. Veolyra moved to the couch and sat, crossing one leg over the other. Her tail curled neatly beside her like punctuation. I used to dream about exile, she said. That surprised him. You? Exile? Yes. Being banished from the courts. No more duties. No more eyes watching everything I do. She traced a claw along the obsidian pendant. It was the only freedom I could imagine. Losing everything just to find out who I was. Jalen sat across from her. And? Who are you? Her eyes locked onto his. Someone who's tired of pretending. Later that night, he lay on his bunk, staring at the ceiling panel as soft footsteps padded past his door. The common room light clicked on. He rose silent, walked barefoot to the entrance and peeked in. Veolyra knelt in the center of the common area in a meditative pose, but not like before. This was different. Her clothes were gone, replaced with a stretch fabric training set that hugged every curve. Her eyes were closed, her body swaying in slow, deliberate rhythm. It was a dance, but not for him. For herself. A ritual of release. Am I interrupting? Jalen asked softly. She didn't startle. Just opened one eye. You're always interrupting. He leaned against the wall. Want me to go? She stood. No. Stay. They faced each other. You could ask me anything, she said. But you won't. You're afraid of what you'll hear. Jalen stepped closer. So tell me anyway. She tilted her head. All right. I know why you don't wear a rank pin. Why your military record's redacted. Why your shoulder scars don't match any official incident. Silence. Then she whispered. You were blamed for something. His chest tightened. 43 people. A research ship I was ordered to escort. Pirates hit us mid-jump. I followed protocol. Took the fire. Still one torpedo got through. You survived. They didn't. He didn't expect her to touch him. But she did. Just 2 fingers on his forearm. Her bioluminescence flared gently at the point of contact. You carry ghosts? She said. So do I. In the hush that followed, it was suddenly obvious. They weren't opposites. They were mirrors. And something between them had begun to crack open. Not weakness, but the start of something that might be healing. Jalen stood in the darkened common room long after Veilira had returned to her quarters. Her touch lingered. Not physically. He was a soldier, trained to forget sensations that didn't matter. But this one did. It burned somewhere deep, in the parts of him he thought were frozen for good. And maybe that scared him more than anything. He sat on the couch, poured himself 2 fingers of synthetic whiskey, and stared out the viewport at the stars. Stars didn't change. People did. The next morning, the mood shifted. The station's internal alert rang out, low tone, not emergency, but serious. Jalen's Nero band pinged. All cultural liaisons report to briefing deck A, immediate. He was already in uniform, an old habit that returned without thought. Outside his door, Veilira waited. She wore a slim diplomat's coat over a smooth black wrap and moved like she expected every corridor to challenge her. Something's happened, she said simply. At the lift, she asked him, Do humans always lie this early in the morning? Only when it makes the day easier. I'd rather the truth. You and I both. Administrator Voss was already at the front of the briefing room, flanked by 2 Federation enforcers and 1 Drexian observer whose sharp metal armor made everyone else seem underdressed. Veilira's ears flattened the moment she saw the enforcer insignias. What's going on? Jalen asked as he stepped in beside her. Voss didn't sugarcoat. There's been a breach. A Lyceran diplomatic packet was intercepted while in station transfer. The purity block on Lysera is blaming us for negligence, and for allowing human influence to infect classified files. Veilira's jaw tightened. The block wants blood. They're demanding an immediate recall of the delegation. Which includes you. I'm not finished here. They don't care. Voss met Jalen's eyes. You've been listed as a liability. Your military record just got dredged out of its grave. They want you off the liaison team. I was never on the team. You drafted me at gunpoint. And now I'm trying to protect you. If you care about her. She nodded toward Veilira. Keep your distance. Until we clean this up. Jalen didn't speak on the way back to the suite. He didn't have to. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was building into something sharp. Inside the common room, Veilira turned to him. Her tone was ice. You knew this would happen. What? You knew your past could compromise everything. And yet you accepted the liaison role. I didn't accept anything. I was backed into it. And I stayed because... Because what? Her voice rose. Because you think you can fix what broke inside you by fixing me? You think playing tour guide makes you noble? Jalen stared at her. No, he said quietly. I stayed because I didn't want to run anymore. She blinked, ears twitching. I stayed, he repeated, because I met you. Her posture softened a fraction. But the fire in her eyes didn't go out. We are not a solution to each other's damage. No, he agreed. But we might be the reason we start healing. She turned away then, staring out the viewport again. You're going to be recalled. I know. And you'll be reassigned. Probably to a mining station on the edge of nowhere. She turned back to him. Her voice dropped. Then we don't have much time. What are you saying? I'm saying. Her breath caught. There are rules. But they've never been mine. She took a step forward. He didn't move. I don't know where this is going, she whispered, but I know it doesn't feel like politics. He reached out, brushing her fingers. And just like that, the line between forbidden and inevitable began to fade. The next morning, the suite was still, too still. Jalen found Veilira seated cross-legged on the floor. Eyes closed, fingers laced together in her lap. She didn't acknowledge him at first, but her tail gave a slow curl at the sound of his boots. I thought you were going to avoid me today, she murmured. I tried, he replied. Didn't take. Her lips curved faintly. So you failed again. Story of my life. He crossed the room and sank to the floor across from her, mirroring her pose, albeit less gracefully. Veolyra opened one eye, then the other. Do you always sit like a man expecting a fight? I usually am. Then this will be interesting. She leaned forward and placed a small, rectangular object between them, a Lycerin neural mesh, a flexible lattice of light and fiber. Jalen frowned. What is that? A bridge. Between what? You and me. She lifted it delicately and pressed one end to her temple. The mesh pulsed softly. Then she passed it to him. It's harmless. Temporary. Like a translator but for emotion. It allows shared memory traces, only surface feelings, no thoughts. He hesitated. What if I don't want you to feel what I feel? Veolyra's voice was barely a whisper. Then I'll know that too. He took it, thumb brushing the silver threads, and pressed it to his temple. The pulse flickered. And then the world shifted. He felt her heartbeat. Not just the rhythm, he felt the shape of it, like wind circling through a canyon. He felt wonder, sharp and crystalline. He felt fear, cold and precise. But deeper than fear, curiosity wrapped in restraint. And then, he felt himself. Through her. Her perception of him, restrained violence, haunted strength. Not pity, not contempt. Respect. Something more. The wave passed, and the mesh fell dark between them. They sat in silence, breathing in sync. Your mind is loud, she said finally. You're not the first to say that. But it's real. No pretense. Most diplomats, hell, most Lycerins, layer themselves in performance. You don't. I stopped performing when I stopped believing anyone cared about the act. Veolyra reached forward and lifted the mesh from the floor. I'll return this to the science wing. They'll ask if it worked. And? I'll lie. Hours later, Administrator Voss summoned them again. This time the message was brief. Counselor Tren Volas has docked. Immediate reception protocol begins. Veolyra went still. Jalen didn't recognize the name. Until he looked at her and saw her fur dim to a shade closer to Stormcloud. Your father? He asked. She nodded once. Council Elder. Purity block. And just like that, the silence between them wasn't tension anymore. It was fear. The main reception hall of Meridian Prime had never looked more artificial. Every banner was hung with precision. Every scent neutralized. Every flickering screen scrubbed of human entertainment in favor of pan-species diplomatic channels. The whole room reeked of nervous perfectionism. Counselor Tren Volas arrived flanked by 2 Lycerin guards dressed in ceremonial bone-white armor, their fur dyed with the ink patterns of their caste. But it was Volas himself who drew the eye. He was tall, taller than Veolyra, and his fur was a darker violet veined with silver, his eyes cold and ancient. Unlike his daughter, there was no warmth in his glow. Only control. Jalen watched as Veolyra stepped forward, her posture perfect, her voice composed. Counselor, I greet you in the tongue of the homeworld. Tren didn't smile. Daughter, you look changed. The station air is dry, she said smoothly. It affects the coat. Perhaps you should return before it does more damage. Veolyra held his gaze without flinching. I'm not finished here. Tren looked past her. Straight at Jalen. You are the liaison? Jalen nodded. Commander Jalen Rice. I've reviewed your file. The sealed one. Jalen's jaw tightened. Veolyra stepped between them. Counselor. Tren raised a single finger, and her voice died. It is inappropriate for you to speak while under active evaluation, he said. Jalen took a step forward. With respect, Counselor, your daughter is not under interrogation. Not yet. The tension in the room thickened. Even the guards shifted slightly, uncertain. but ready. Administrator Voss cleared her throat. Perhaps we should relocate to a private chamber. No, Trent said. I will address the council chamber publicly tomorrow. Today, I will inspect the conditions of my daughter's assignment. His voice held that smooth, quiet tone Jalen knew from military officers who made the worst decisions sound like protocol. You may return to your quarters, Trent said to Veilira. And you, Commander Rice, are instructed to remain no closer than 30 meters from her until further notice. Jalen opened his mouth. Veilira beat him to it. On whose authority? Mine, Trent said. And by extension, the purity block. Veilira's fur flared faintly. Her tail flicked once. You hold no jurisdiction over my proximity to cultural liaisons. Trent's nostrils flared. If you continue this defiance, I will recall you personally. She didn't blink. Then you will answer to the Central Lyceran Council for interrupting a sanctioned treaty exchange. The two of them stared at each other like statues. It was Jalen who finally spoke. I'll keep the distance. Veilira turned sharply. You don't have to. I do, he said gently. At least until tomorrow. Let him feel like he's in control. Trent's gaze was a glacier. This isn't over, he said, turning on his heel. No, Jalen muttered as the guards followed him out. It's just beginning. That night, the suite was too quiet. Jalen sat in the dark, staring at the obsidian pendant still hanging from a hook by the window. He couldn't sleep. And apparently, either could she. A quiet knock came at his private door. He opened it. Veilira stood barefoot, wrapped in a soft shift, her fur dimmed but her eyes alive with fire. I shouldn't be here, she said. I know. Then say something that'll make me go. He stepped aside. She didn't. Veilira crossed the threshold like a soldier slipping behind enemy lines. Silent. Sure. Ready for consequences. Jalen shut the door behind her, but it felt more like sealing them inside something. This moment, this tension, this truth that had been boiling just beneath the surface since the day she stepped off that shuttle. They stood in the low light of his quarters. Neither speaking. Neither needing to. She reached for him first. Not with the grace of a diplomat or the calculation of a strategist, but with something raw. Something real. Jalen caught her wrists, gently, and looked her in the eye. You sure? Her ears flicked. I'm tired of being sure. Just be with me. While we still can. His hands slid to her waist. She closed the gap, her body pressed into his with the unspoken need of someone who'd waited too long for this to be allowed. The kiss came fast, urgent, not gentle. Fangs grazed his lower lip. Her bioluminescence flickered across her arms, pulsing in time with her breath. The alien warmth of her skin made his own nerve-ending spark. She pulled back just enough to whisper. Still afraid I'll eat you? Terrified. Good. They didn't sleep. There was too much to say. Between kisses, she told him of her childhood in the marble towers of Lysera Prime, where affection was rationed like water and truth was traded like currency. He told her of the mission above Dros V. The guilt that never faded. The silence afterward that had felt more punishing than any court-martial. They spoke in fragments, in touches, in confessions drawn out of exhausted skin and naked honesty. And then, in the darkest part of the night, when she curled against his chest, she whispered, My father will try to erase this. Not just us. Me. The me I am when I'm with you. Jalen kissed her forehead. He can't erase what's real. You don't understand, she said. He won't just recall me. He'll invoke cleansing protocol. Jalen froze. He knew what that meant. Neurotherapy. Personality overwrite. A gentle word for a brutal thing. Then we won't let him. How? We make this matter. Publicly. Irrefutably. No secrets left to bury. She looked up at him. That will cost you everything. He traced the line of her jaw, memorizing it like a map he'd never be allowed to lose. I lost everything once already. This time I'm choosing what I lose. She didn't answer, but her hand gripped his like a lifeline. And for the first time since arriving at Meridian Prime, Jalen Rice believed in something again. Across the station, Counselor Tren Volas reviewed surveillance logs with surgical precision. He stopped at the thermal trace of two bodies in close proximity, locked in the unmistakable shape of intimacy. His eyes narrowed. "Prepare the documentation," he said to his aide. "Yes, Counselor." "Charges?" "Contamination." He folded his hands and watched the slow pulse of light move across the screen. "I gave her every chance." Jalen didn't get more than a few hours of sleep before his comm link blared to life. "Commander Rice. Report to Security Deck 12 immediately. You are under formal review." He sat up instantly. Veolira stirred beside him, her fur rumpled, eyes still clouded by sleep. "What is it?" she whispered. He looked at her. The shape of her. The memory of last night burned across his skin like a brand. "Trouble," he said simply. She was already on her feet. "I'll go with you." "You can't. That'll only make it worse." "But No," he said softly. "Let me handle it." Security Deck 12 looked less like an administrative hall and more like a tribunal. 3 monitors hovered over the central table. Administrator Voss stood on the left. The other 2 were Lycerin delegates from the Purity Block, and seated between them, watching everything with cold precision, was Tren Volas. "Commander Jalen Rice," Voss began, her voice stripped of personal tone. "You've been summoned in response to a formal complaint issued by the Lycerin Council." Tren folded his hands on the table. "Your military record was flagged for concealed infractions. Post-trauma aggression. Civilian exposure. You were acquitted, yes. But our concern is what was never disclosed." Jalen said nothing. The first Lycerin delegate, a female with deep blue markings along her throat, spoke next. "We've reviewed surveillance records from Maintenance Corridor B. Thermal footage confirms intimate proximity with our delegate, Veolira Sr. There it was. The charge. Not seduction. Not love. Contamination. The nature of your relationship," Tren continued, "compromises the integrity of the Cultural Exchange Initiative. It may constitute grounds for full diplomatic recall and sanctions." Jalen's jaw tightened. "You don't care about integrity," he said. "You care about control." One of the monitors pulsed. "We're not here to debate motives, Commander." "Then what are you here for?" Jalen asked. "You've already made your decision." Tren's eyes narrowed. "We are offering you a choice." "Of course you are." "You will issue a formal confession," Tren said, "accepting full responsibility. You exploited an inexperienced delegate. You acted alone. Veolira will be removed quietly, subjected to restorative neuroprotocols and reintegrated into Lycerin society. And if I don't? The Purity Block will publish every detail. The footage. Your record. Your failure. The resulting scandal will end the exchange program entirely. And Veolira will become the cautionary tale that justifies the block's next purge. Silence fell. Jalen looked to Voss. Her face was unreadable. "I need time," he said. "You have 6 hours," Trent said. Back in the suite, Jalen found Veolira in the common room, standing with her back to the window. She turned before he spoke. "You're being forced to confess," she said. "I know. Surveillance got us. They're threatening to erase you. To make you forget this." Veolira's ears flattened. "You'd be labeled a predator. I've been called worse. And if you refuse? The program collapses. The block wins. Maybe the war starts all over again." Veolira crossed the room in 3 steps. "You can't give them that choice." "I don't want to." "Then what?" Jalen looked up. "I need to show them something they can't deny. Something stronger than policy. Stronger than surveillance." She blinked. "What?" "A Lycerin sacred right," he said slowly. "You told me once, there's a tradition. Something called the call of ether. Emotional resonance. Performed vocally. Shared. Public. Unfakeable. Veolyra stared. It's not meant for humans. The neural strain. Will it prove the bond? Yes. Beyond doubt. Then teach me. Her voice cracked. It takes a lifetime. I've got 6 hours. Veolyra didn't speak for several seconds. Just stared at him, wide-eyed, the soft glow under her fur pulsing with stress. Her hands clenched at her sides. You don't know what you're asking. Yes, I do, Jalen said. You said it's the one thing your people believe can't be faked. It isn't about mimicry. It's emotional resonance. You're trying to sing something your brain isn't wired to process. Can it kill me? Not unless you force it. But your neural pathways will fight it. You could lose consciousness. Seize. Burn out your memory circuits for good. Jalen stepped forward. I'd rather lose pieces of myself than let them erase all of you. Veolyra's breath caught. She reached out, fingers trembling, and placed one clawed hand against his temple. I will guide you, she whispered. But only to the edge. The rest, you'll have to jump alone. The training room was old, buried beneath the diplomatic wing, a disused Lycerin chamber originally meant for private recitation. No surveillance. No observers. Just silence, padded walls, and the scent of dried ceremonial ash. Veolyra took position in the center. Jalen mirrored her, kneeling opposite, his palms resting flat on the floor. She began the call of ether in her native tongue. Not speech, vocal tones. Harmonics. Sounds that vibrated just below language, like the soft note of a memory you couldn't name. Jalen's head ached immediately. Breathe with me, she said, her voice resonating in 2 tones now, one spoken, one harmonic. He tried. The first attempt triggered a feedback loop in his implants. His vision darkened. Don't force the shape. Feel the intent. I don't know what that means. Don't sing it, she said. Feel me. Let that speak through you. Her hand moved to his chest. He closed his eyes. And suddenly, he wasn't hearing the sound anymore. He was inside it. Her memories bled through the air. Childhood shame. The weight of expectation. A young woman told she was brilliant only when she obeyed. Flashes of ritual halls and cold smiles. Her father's voice, disappointed, hollow. And beneath it, the shape of him. How she'd seen him that first day. Guarded. Burdened. The hard lines of his face softened when he looked at her, even when he tried not to let it show. She'd never said it. But it was there, layered beneath every interaction. She wanted him to see her. Not as a delegate. Not as a hybrid project. As herself. And now he did. The sound that came from Jalen's mouth didn't belong to any human. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't melodic. But it resonated. Her glow flared. Her voice joined his, 2 harmonics folding over one another in perfect imperfection. The chamber shuddered. And then, silence. Jalen collapsed. He woke in her arms. His skin was slick with sweat. His shirt clung to him. His breath tasted like lightning. Did it work? He rasped. Veolyra stroked his hair back from his temple. You're insane. But did it work? Yes, she whispered. Gods help us, yes. Administrator Voss nearly choked on her synth coffee when Jalen barged into her office 2 hours later. You're not on the schedule. Change it. I want public broadcast rights. Diplomatic override. Full station access. Rice, what the hell are you doing? Ending the war before it starts. He dropped a data crystal on her desk. Broadcast this. What is it? He smiled. Truth. Across Meridian Prime, every holoscreen blinked blue. And then the call of ether played. Not as melody. But as confession. Human and Lycerin. Raw. Unfiltered. Terrifying in its honesty. And undeniable. At first, there was silence. The kind of silence that settles before tectonic plates shift. On Meridian Prime, the call of ether played across every sector. It rolled through the habitat rings, through the market decks, the administrative towers, even the neglected minor wards where no Lyceran had ever set foot. For many, it was just sound, alien and beautiful, a strange duet of dissonant souls. But for Lycerans, it was thunder. Veilira's harmonics were flawless. The tones of inheritance, of bloodline and truth. She sang not as a diplomat but as a daughter of the high castes. And Jalen's resonance. It shouldn't have existed. But it did. Uneven, fractured, but real. Together, they didn't just perform a rite. They broke a law of biology. A human couldn't perform the call. A human wasn't supposed to feel that deeply. But now the whole galaxy had proof. And Tren Volas knew it. Administrator Voss stood in front of the Lyceran delegation, her face unreadable. I take it you've all reviewed the transmission. Tren Volas's fur had gone dull. His usual composure had cracked into something colder. The boy tampered with a sacred rite. Voss raised an eyebrow. Is that what happened? Because from my end, it looked like he tapped into a part of your culture you claim humans can't even comprehend. The purity of the rite is in the blood. Another delegate snapped. This was mimicry. Contamination through sentiment. Voss leaned forward. Or maybe love isn't as species-bound as you want to believe. Tren turned slowly. I demand the immediate detainment of Veilira Sin for violating Lyceran religious protocol. You can't, Voss replied. She's under interspecies diplomatic protections. So is Commander Rice. You won't be able to shield them forever. No, Voss said softly. But maybe I won't have to. Jalen sat alone in the suite, staring at his hands. They still trembled slightly from the neurofeedback. The door opened. Veilira stepped in, her posture tight, but her eyes electric. You did it, she said. They're panicking. Good. They've called an emergency session of the Central Council. There's no precedent for this. You'll be summoned. Yes. And condemned? Maybe. He stood. Then I'm coming with you. You're not Lyceran. No. But I'm part of this. Veilira's breath hitched. They'll try to tear us apart, she said. Not just with policy. With memory alteration. Reputation destruction. Quiet exile. Then let them try. She stepped forward, gripping the front of his shirt. Her voice trembled. They'll tell me I was manipulated. That what I feel isn't real. Then remember this, he said, leaning down until their foreheads touched. They can rewrite records. But they can't rewrite what happened between us in that chamber. What you felt. What we sang. She pressed her lips to his. And for a long moment there were no borders. No policies. No fear. Only the promise that somehow they'd already begun changing everything. Later that evening, Veilira stood in the center of the Lyceran conclave chamber, facing 36 delegates under the cold light of mirrored crystal. Tren Volas stood across from her, his face set like carved stone. Do you deny it? He asked. No, she said clearly. I affirm it. Gasps echoed. I chose him. Not for alliance. Not for strategy. For truth. He is mine. And I am his. You are contaminated, a delegate snarled. I am awakened. Then you are no longer Lyceran. Veilira smiled. Then perhaps it is time we redefine what that means. You disgrace your bloodline, Tren Volas said, his voice smooth, dangerous. Veilira stood in the center of the council circle, her hands clasped behind her back, tail still, ears sharp. Calm. But her glow pulsed with defiance. No, she said. I honor it. Tren stepped forward. You speak as if your shame is evolution. I speak as if your fear is not law, she countered. Murmurs rippled through the rows of counselors, many of them older, robed in ceremonial dye, their fur patterns stark against the cold white chamber. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others narrowed their eyes. Jalen watched from the chamber's threshold. Not allowed to speak. not even supposed to be present. But Veilira insisted. Let them see him, she told the delegation. Let them see the one you claim corrupted me. And here he stood, flanked by 2 station guards, jaw tight, unblinking. Tren Volas looked at his daughter like she'd become a virus. You think this is about love? This is about contamination. Every ritual you polluted, every tradition you desecrated. I honored them in the only way that matters. Veilira cut in. With honesty. And risk. And heart. Tren's composure slipped. There will be a vote, he snapped. On your status. Your caste. Your future. And if this council is sane, they will vote to end this farce and return you to Lysera for immediate neuro-cleansing. He turned to the gathered councilors. I call the vote. A soft chime echoed through the chamber. One by one, the councilors raised their hands to activate their vote nodes. Blue for dismissal. Gold for acceptance. The seconds ticked like drumbeats in Jalen's head. And then, the lights tallied. 14 blue. 19 gold. A pause. Then, gold won. Gasps filled the air. Someone dropped their tablet. Veilira's glow surged, her bioluminescence painting her throat and arms in radiant pulses. She'd done it. They'd done it. The council leader stood. An ancient female, her fur as pale as winter, eyes like deep water. Veilira Sin, she said, this council recognizes your bond. You are not casteless. You are not cleansed. You are Lyceran evolved. Tren Volas turned to stone. His face was unreadable, but his fury radiated like solar heat. You've doomed us, he hissed. No, Veilira said softly, stepping past him toward the exit, toward Jalen. I've set us free. She walked straight into Jalen's arms. The guards didn't stop her. The chamber didn't speak. And in that moment, just for a heartbeat, the future cracked open. Back in the suite, Jalen closed the door and pressed his forehead to it. Veilira was quiet behind him. Then she spoke. They'll fight this. I know. The purity block won't go quietly. Tren won't vanish. I know. They'll try to discredit the vote. To challenge the legality. They'll send agents. Saboteurs. Propaganda. He turned and faced her. Then we give them something they can't erase. Veilira blinked. What? He crossed to her, took her hands, and pressed a small data key into her palm. I've been offered passage to the Lyceran homeworld. As the first formal human envoy under new integration protocol. Veilira's eyes widened. You're going back with me? I'm not letting this movement be yours alone. I'm in this. All the way. She stepped forward, touched her forehead to his. You understand what this means? Yeah. That we'll be hunted. Then let them chase us, he said. They can't catch what's already changing. Across the galaxy, signals began to spread. Lyceran scientists analyzing the neural resonance of the call. Human media picking up the footage, at first with curiosity, then with awe. Diplomatic outposts reporting new hybrids stepping forward. Quiet unions once hidden in shadow now demanding rights. And slowly, like the tide, the galaxy began to shift. The stars didn't blink. But the people beneath them finally did. 2 weeks later, the Lyceran cruiser Varantha's Promise docked at Integration Station, a neutral territory constructed above the Glane Rift, the most politically volatile sector in the quadrant. Veilira stood beside Jalen at the viewport, watching the station come into view. It's beautiful, she said softly. It's unstable, he replied. A floating metaphor. Her tail flicked against his hip. So are we. The cruiser's docking arms engaged with a soft thud. The ramp began to descend. Veilira adjusted her collar, an interwoven blend of Lyceran diplomatic silk and a Federation alloy clasp. Integration attire. Symbolic. Uncomfortable. You sure we're ready for this? Jalen asked, straightening the cuffs of his jacket. No, she said, but we're necessary. They stepped out together. Waiting for them were diplomats from over a dozen species: Elvari, human, Lycerin, Aurelian, even a lone Akari translator with 7 iridescent eyes blinking in unison. At the center of the welcome party stood Counselor Viratel of the United Harmony Accord. She was ancient by Akari standards, her exoskin faded to opalescent silver, but her gaze held the weight of centuries. "Welcome," Viratel said, "to the first Integrated Diplomacy Summit." Veilira bowed. "We come with shared purpose. And shared enemies," Viratel replied. Jalen stiffened. "Threats? Purity factions from both your worlds have called the summit a perversion. There have been incidents. Security? We have protocols. But we expect you to be the symbol that holds the fabric together." Veilira exchanged a glance with Jalen. "No pressure," he muttered. Inside the summit hall, things were worse. Half the Lycerin delegation refused to acknowledge Jalen. One of the human delegates, a Federation senator from Eridani Prime, outright called the hybrid movement reckless emotional theater. Veilira responded with calm, razor-sharp diplomacy. Jalen responded by nearly breaking his chair in half. "They don't want understanding," he told her that night in their summit quarters. "They want to maintain the illusion of difference. Because it gives them power. And what do we have?" Veilira slid into his arms, her fur brushing his chest. "Proof. That connection is possible. That it's real." He kissed her temple. "They'll come after it. Let them. We won't burn." They didn't have to wait long. 3 nights into the summit, an explosion rocked the outer docking ring. No casualties. Minimal damage. But the message was clear. They could be reached. Later, as emergency systems flickered and summit security scrambled, Jalen found a small data spike planted beneath their shared terminal, coated in Lycerin sealant, embedded with purist encryption. He held it up to Veilira. "They got this into our room." Her eyes narrowed. "Then we show them that fear doesn't decide what love builds." He stared at her. "You're going to stand up there tomorrow and give that speech, aren't you?" "Yes." "You'll be marked for assassination." "Yes." "And you're not going to flinch?" Veilira stepped close. "I flinched the moment I realized I was falling for a human. I haven't since." The next morning, she stood before the summit chamber. All lights dimmed. All eyes on her. Jalen stood behind the partition, silent. Watching. She raised her voice, not loud, not theatrical. Clear. Strong. "I was born into purity," she said. "I was taught that bloodline was destiny. That to dilute ourselves was to die." She paused. "I have never felt more alive than when I broke that lie." Gasps. Murmurs. Some delegates left the room. She didn't stop. "This is not contamination. It is transformation. You fear that we will lose ourselves in one another. I tell you, we will find ourselves." From the crowd, a single Lycerin stood. Counselor Vexler. Tren Volaz's old rival. "Then let the hybrids speak." Veilira blinked. And then nodded. Behind her, Jalen stepped onto the dais. Hand in hand. They didn't say anything. They didn't need to. Their presence was the answer. The chamber didn't cheer. But it didn't riot either. And in diplomacy, that was a miracle. The day after the summit speech, something strange happened. No assassination attempts. No sabotage. No dramatic condemnations. Instead, messages. From other stations. From colonies once silent. A Lycerin researcher on Halo Prime requesting access to Veilira's integration protocols. A human miner from the belt saying he married a hybrid engineer 2 years ago in secret. A Drexian administrator asking if the ether call could be adapted for tri-species bonding. They didn't flood in. They trickled. But Jalen knew water always started that way, slow, patient, inevitable. He and Veilira watched them come in over breakfast. Veilira's feet were propped on the edge of the table, tail lazily coiled around the leg of her chair. She wore one of his shirts, oversized, slightly wrinkled, and absolutely nothing else. Jalen pretended not to notice the way her fur shimmered in the sunlight. You think it's real? He asked, sipping rehydrated coffee. You think this change is actually coming? Veilira stretched, ears twitching in satisfaction. It's already here. Change never announces itself. It just keeps moving while old powers pretend it can be reversed. He leaned back, studying her. You know, I was ready to vanish before I met you. Good, she said. You vanished. And what came out of the void was finally you. By midday, their suite's security doubled. Not because of threats, but because the Lycerin Unity Council officially recognized Veilira and Jalen's partnership. It was the first interspecies bond ratified by both governments. And some weren't pleased. That evening, Administrator Voss called them into her office. Her desk was cluttered with diplomatic tabs, intelligence intercepts, and a stack of translation logs taller than Jalen's elbow. She looked tired, but satisfied. You're causing trouble, she said without preamble. Just enough to count, Jalen replied. Veilira tilted her head. You didn't call us here to compliment our rebellion. No, Voss said, handing over a data chip. That's from the Central Integration Authority. They're drafting proposals for a permanent hybrid alliance council. Veilira took it, claws brushing the surface. You want us to sit on it? More than that. We want you to build it. Jalen blinked. You're serious. You two started this. That comes with responsibility. Veilira was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, faint and feral. I'll design the structure, she said. With real integration. Not just diplomats. Scientists. Educators. Linguists. Children, even. Voss arched an eyebrow. Children? Jalen understood before anyone else. She means future ones. Veilira's hand found his under the table. She didn't have to say it aloud. He felt it. Something new had already begun to grow. That night, they lay together in the dark. Not speaking. Not needing to. Their fingers interlocked. Her tail lazily traced circles on his thigh. You afraid? He whispered. Of what? Becoming a symbol. Veilira turned toward him, her eyes glowing soft lavender. I'm not a symbol. No? I'm your chaos. Your tether. Your mirror. Your problem. He chuckled. Best problem I ever had. Don't forget it. Elsewhere, a shadowed ship docked quietly in the maintenance ring. No transponder. No registry. Inside, a Lycerin in unmarked armor activated a comm. Target confirmed. Operation Silence proceeds. The galaxy didn't shift with fire. It never did. It shifted with whispers. And someone was trying to silence them all. Jalen felt it in his bones before the alert hit. The kind of quiet that wasn't peace, just the moment a blade pauses in the air before falling. The station's artificial dawn flickered. He shot upright in bed, breath shallow. Veilira was already up, crouched beside the terminal, fur bristling faintly, her tail low and still. You feel it too? She whispered. Yeah, he said. What time is it? 4:17. She answered without checking. Her ears twitched toward the wall. Then the lights pulsed red. Security alert, Sector 3A breach. All dignitaries report to designated safe zones. Jalen was already strapping on his sidearm. Veilira was slipping into a fitted uniform, her bioluminescence suppressed to minimal levels, her body instinctively shifting into stealth. She looked feral. Perfect. Come on, he said, pressing the emergency override on the suite's door. It refused to open. Locked down, he growled. Override code, Rice Alpha 4. Already bypassing. Veilira muttered, claws dancing over the side panel. Sparks burst, the lights blinked once, and the door hissed open. Your people build such fragile systems, she added, voice dry. Yeah, well, your people blow them up. They stepped into the hallway. 2 guards lay unconscious by the far wall, alive, but stripped of weapons. A clean takedown. Too clean. Professional, Jalen muttered. Silent entry, controlled breach. No death. Veilira touched her fingers to one of the guards' foreheads, then stood. Lycerin technique. They're here for you. No, she said grimly. They're here for us. The station was in lockdown. Security turrets rotated. Automatic defense protocols scrambled to identify intruders. Civilians were being herded into safe rooms. Jalen and Veilira cut through back corridors, using service ducts Veilira had mapped out weeks earlier. For curiosity, she'd said. Jalen was grateful for her curiosity now. They reached the summit wing in time to find two saboteurs crouched by the ventilation hub, both in white armor with blank visors and wrist-mounted plasma blades. Veilira didn't hesitate. She moved like a ghost. Her body slammed into the first attacker with fluid force, sending him crashing into a control panel. Jalen leveled his sidearm and fired once, non-lethal. The second figure spun toward him, but Veilira was faster. A single sweep of her tail knocked the saboteur's feet out. Her claws pressed to his throat. Identify, she snarled in Lycerin. The helmet hissed and folded back. A young male. Midcast. Pale eyes. No fear. Purity must be preserved, he said. You attacked a neutral station, Jalen snapped. You endangered everyone, the man sneered. You already did that. By defiling our rights. Our daughters. Our species. Veilira's glow deepened, her arms illuminating in jagged patterns of fury. You are the defilement, she said. Not because you hate, but because you fear change. And worse, you deny it. The saboteur didn't flinch. You won't stop what's coming. Neither will you, Jalen said, stepping forward, and hit the man's neural shutoff with a stunned spike. He crumpled. Veilira stood silently above him, breathing hard. Then she said, They wanted to make us martyrs. Then we stay alive. Later, in the central hall, the station officials reviewed footage. The entire summit delegation watched. When they reached the part where Veilira moved like flame and Jalen struck with soldier's precision, the room went still. Then Counselor Vexler stood. This is what they fear, she said. Not war. Unity. They stood together beneath the vaulted dome of Integration Station's central atrium. The stars stretched overhead in a sweep of transparent alloy, unfiltered, unblurred, infinite. Jalen held Veilira's hand in silence. Around them, security drones buzzed with post-incident diagnostics. Summit staff scrambled to repair trust, reassure allies, rewrite the threat reports in soft diplomatic phrasing. But none of it mattered. Not now. Because they'd survived. Together. Still whole. Still defiant. Still them. Veilira tilted her head toward him, ears twitching softly. They'll keep coming. I know. They'll lie. Rewrite the facts. Spread fear. They already are. She turned fully, pressing her body against his chest. So what do we do? Jalen looked out the window at the stars. Stay true. Stay loud. Stay visible. Veilira smiled, not the careful, polished expression she gave to the press. Not the diplomatic curve of her lips she used for courtrooms and councils. No, this was the real one. The one she saved for him. Then let's give them something they can't unsee. 2 weeks later, they stood at the head of the first interspecies hybrid council. Veilira wore a custom robe, part Lycerin heritage, part human utility. Her bioluminescent markings glowed in intricate ceremonial patterns that pulsed with anticipation. Jalen wore no insignia, no rank. Just a simple black jacket with a silver pin shaped like two intertwined spirals. The symbol of integration. And in his chest, just beneath that pin, was a chip encoded with the full recording of the call of ether. Not for use. Not for politics. But so that, one day, their child could hear it. And know the truth. They named her Naira. Half human, half Lycerin. Eyes like starlight. Skin that shimmered between dusk and dawn. She grew up in the gardens of Integration Station, chasing gravity shifts and inventing languages only other hybrids could understand. By the time she was 5, she had spoken at 3 conferences. By the time she was 10, she asked her father why anyone would ever think different species couldn't love. He didn't have an answer. Only a soft smile. And a glance toward Vaelira, who stood watching from the balcony, her arms folded, her glow dancing across her arms in steady waves of joy. In the end, Tren Volas was exiled. Not for ideology, but for failing to stop the inevitable. He lived long enough to see the new world rise, messy, strange, glorious. And he lived long enough to understand that love was not contamination. It was evolution. And so the galaxy changed. Not with a war, but with a whisper. With 2 hands held in the dark. With a song that only hearts could hear.